I'm Dr. Mark Hatala, and I want to welcome you to our discussion on writing the opening paragraph. So the hook, then blah, 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 and then your thesis statement. But let's get started by saying, please buy my books on APA style. And so I have 3 books that will help you with your writing and make you a better writer. The opening it can be tricky. Should you begin your paper with a question or a hook? And see, I started it with a question there. I believe that introductions should start broadly and then end with a thesis statement. Okay, so we'll talk about this in another video too, but a paper follows an hourglass format where it begins and ends broadly and then discusses specific articles and research in the middle. So what I tell students to do is plug the phrase, people have always wondered about blank, whatever their topic is, and how it influences them and changes their lives. Now, they shouldn't actually use this phrase in their final paper, but use it as a placeholder to start your paper, and then there you go, you're already starting to write. So here's an opening from an A paper. I'm going to give you examples from a number of different student papers. Nearly everyone experiences a worrisome thought from time to time, whether it's about a mortgage or a marriage. So that's good, that's alliteration. For some, however, these thoughts never end. Millions of individuals are plagued every waking moment by endless torrents of uncontrollable worry as victims of generalized anxiety disorder. And they correctly use that abbreviation too. So use the term and then parenthetically afterwards the abbreviation. And then in the next sentence, you can just use the abbreviation. So it's good because it begins with the universal, because who hasn't been worried about something before? And then it becomes specific about people with GAD and their uncontrollable worry. So here's an opening from a D paper on Munchausen syndrome. The definition, which is spelled incorrectly, by the way, of Munchausen syndrome by proxy is a psychological disorder in which a parent, typically a mother, harms her child by falsifying medical need and records. It is also considered a fictitious disorder since the symptoms are artificially produced and do not occur naturally. So to start, using the term factitious disorder without a reference, that's a huge red flag for your professor that you're plagiarizing because nobody uses that kind of phraseology. Also, please spell definition correctly because that means you're ignoring the spell checker. And so that's, yeah. So the paper just jumps in. There's no hook. There's no citation. It's got spelling errors, etc. The thesis statement provides a concise summary of what the paper is going to be about, and it's the last sentence of your introductory paragraph. Now, the thesis statement is important because it lets your professor know how the rest of the paper is going to unfold. And I tell my students, really, once you have the thesis statement in place, the rest of the paper writes itself. Okay? So where does it come from? A thesis statement's derived from the research articles you've collected for your paper. So you should identify 3 or more themes or topics or commonalities to use in your paper, and those become the basis for your thesis statement. Now, themes vary from paper to paper, but there's a number of common themes that work across all papers. So, for example, many conditions have multiple treatments available, so you might examine each of those in a different paragraph of your paper. Many topics in clinical psychology follow a here's the definition of it, here's the causes of it, these are what the symptoms look like, and these are the treatments that are available kind of format. Or the paper will just be about different treatments of a particular problem. Topics in cognitive or social psychology are also easy. So for something like attitudes, you could say what they are, and so give a definition of attitudes, how attitudes develop, and then how they're able to be changed over time. So here's a thesis from an A paper. This paper will define the placebo effect, evaluate its efficacy as a treatment method, and examine how it's used in modern medicine. So that's great because it's direct and to the point. So I know how the rest of the paper is going to unfold. It's going to be a definition of the placebo effect, an evaluation of how well it works, and then examples of how it's used in medicine. Here's one from a C paper. Agoraphobia causes distress and impairs a person socially, occupationally, and educationally. But there are many treatments to prevent this anxiety, and then they put a citation at the end. So what's this paper about? Is it about how agoraphobia impairs a person socially, occupationally, and educationally? That's not what it was about. It was actually about the treatments of agoraphobia. So antidepressants, thought stopping, and emotive imagery, although that's nowhere in the thesis statement and should be. Finally, don't put a reference in your thesis statement because like the Nidegger 2012, does that mean that that's their idea? And so that's not your thesis, that's their thesis. It causes confusion. So this thesis could be rewritten as, this paper will discuss the use of antidepressants, thought stopping, and emotive imagery as treatments for the anxiety and distress caused by agoraphobia. So the rewrite is clearer about where the paper is going and what it's actually about. Here's a thesis from an F paper. This paper will shed some light on two aspects of this complex mental disorder. It was about Munchausen by proxy, including the history of the disorder and an effective treatment plan for the disorder. The paper will end by sharing what became of Julie Gregory. Now, what's this paper actually about? It would be best described as a free-flowing literary exercise akin to what I find interesting about Munchausen syndrome. It was actually supposed to be a 4-page paper. It was over 20 pages long. The thesis attempted to provide some guidance, and the last sentence is a callback to a case study that they presented earlier in the introduction, but it's not really clear how this paper is going to unfold. But it can be rewritten. And so what we could say instead is this paper will discuss the history, symptoms, and treatment of Munchausen syndrome by proxy. So see, it's that simple. Now the paper itself, like I said, it was over 20 pages long. It required a lot of revision. But what I think this illustrates is that really there's no such thing as bad papers. There's just papers that need some revision. And as juror said, well, I don't agree with this, but the painter juror said, there's no one so beautiful that you can't picture them more beautifully. But it's the same thing about papers. There's no paper so perfect that it can't be written more clearly and better. So let's leave it at that. I want to thank you for watching this video. I want you to wish you luck with your writing. And how about coming to visit us at apacentral.com? So I have a lot of other videos up there, as well as materials that will help you improve your writing. And have a great day.